Hello everyone, and welcome back to this video course on programming in Java. I'm your host Trey, and today we're going to talk about methods. So without wasting any time, let's get into it. So what are methods? Well, in Java, a method is a block of code that performs a specific task or action. Methods allow you to organize your code into reusable and modular units. So here are key aspects of methods in Java. So the actual syntax for method declaration are as follows. We have an access modifier, a return type, a method name, and then within this method name here, we have our parentheses like so, and then we have our parameters. So you got parameter type 1, parameter name, and we got parameter type 2, and we got parameter name 2, and so on and so forth. So earlier on in this video introduction, in the introduction to this video course, I mentioned what methods are, and methods specifically define the behavior of the object in question. But that's based on object-oriented programming, and even though the concept is the same here, the context is a little bit different. In this video, we are going to talk about methods that are used or that we declare within a class or within the main class that we've been talking about, rather than having a method that is outside of the class. So basically, we're talking about static methods. These methods, like the public static void, main string arguess that we've been using all this time, we are invoking it within the main class of the output variable. So a method basically defines or gives us a specific output depending on what we input in that method. It's better for writing code because it helps us shorten our code as much as possible, but also we can use that for various other reasons. So our syntax here, we have our access modifier. Remember I talked about access modifiers, which are public, all those other things, and we're going to talk about access modifiers later on in object-oriented programming. We also talked about return types, and we're going to talk about those explicitly in this video. And we also talked about method names, so this can be any name that you can put there. We talked about the parentheses and the operations, why they're there, and here we have a new concept called a parameter type and a parameter name. So just like we have public static void string args, the string is the parameter type and the args is the parameter name. So we have this type of scenarios here, and everything is coming in full circle, and then we have our method body right there. So here is a basic example of how to declare a method or how to actually use a method. So we have public static int my method. So we call this public because we call it static because, like we said, it is within our class, and we are not calling it from any other class that is outside. We're going to talk about calling methods outside classes in object-oriented programming, like I said earlier. But right now, let's just focus on the syntax, which is public static and this guy here. So we have public static int. So we have our return type, which is integer here, and then we have the method name, which is my method. And then we got our parameter type, which is int here, and we got number 1. So that is our parameter name. And then we close this guy in our parentheses, and we open this bracket. And then we have our method body here, and then we say system.out of print line, this is your method, and this is your number. So when we say this is your method, and this is your number, this is our output, and then we have our return value, which is number 1. So this can be any number that you plug in there, but here we do not plug in actual values because remember, an identifier cannot begin with a digit. It can start with an underscore, it can start with a dollar sign, it can start with an uppercase, but never a digit. So this is an identifier rather than an actual number. So we have int number 1, and then we return this value number 1. So this is our return type, and this is the syntax for actually So we have this other one here, which can be another number here or another way of declaring a method. Say public static int. This is supposed to be small letter, or this is supposed to be lowercase. It will give you a syntax error, so please change that. So I got public static int, add int number one, and then we have int number two. So this is another way of having a method, right? And same concept, we have system out number plus number one, and then we say plus number two, um, plus equal to return number one plus number two. So return type. There's supposed to be a plus here, concatenating and all that, but I digress. So we have return number one plus number two, and we will return the number one plus the number two. All right. So with that being said, let's talk about the return types. And a return type is a method used. A method is used to return a value. So the return type is specified before the method name. If any method does not return any value, it is return type. It is declared as void. So I have a data type here, and we have integer, right? So our method for the data type here, how to implement it, we have public static int value, and then we have int there, and then we have our value, whatever we want to plug in there. This is going to be our identifier, and we put it in the parentheses, and then your code goes there, and then you have a return of that value that you plugged in there, like that. You cannot use or you cannot declare a return value outside its parentheses. You will get a syntax error. Um, Basically, that's how return value works. So we also have a double, public static double value, and you declare this value as a double or as an integer depending on how you feel like. But then this will only accept a double, and then same as float, public static float value, like that. So you can just copy these concepts here, and once you copy these concepts, you can try experimenting with them. So it's the same everywhere for int, double, float, string. But the only difference here is the void. And we've been using void so much, so let me show you how this void actually works. So you say public static void, and you have a void value. So whatever you name it there, remember all the values in red are the names and not actual return types. So these are names. So public static void value. So void here is not is a return type, but it's a void. So meaning it has no return type whatsoever. And then here you can put literally anything. You can put a string, you can put an int, you can put a character, you can put whatever it is you feel like putting. You can put it there, and you can declare it as a character or a string or a double or a float value. That's why I placed it as wildcard here. You can put int, double, float, string, and whatever else you feel like adding there. And your code goes there, and you have no return type. So whatever you put in that method, you don't necessarily need to call it out. I'll give you examples later on in the video, but this is basically how you use the syntax for using integers, doubles, floats, string, and void. So here's a basic example. We have public static void greet. So notice that this is a void and it has no return type. So once we call this guy, it's going to just come automatically. So we got public static void greet string name. So like I said, this can be a wildcard, it can be anything, it can be double, it can be everything. But because we want name to be a string, we are going to say string name, right? So here we have system.out.print hello, and we concatenate it with our name there, and we don't have a return type. Okay, so we've talked about methods, but then how do you actually invoke these methods, right? So method invocation here, to use a method, you need to invoke or call a method, right? It involves providing actual values. These values are called arguments, and for these actual parameters. So here's a basic example. We have public class test methods, right? So we've got public static void. This is our main method. Notice that here we have our data type, right? We have our data type, which is our string, and we've got args, which is our identifier. So it could be args, argv, whatever it is, but this is the basic syntax. So this is the main method that is used for classes to be able to output whatever we want in that value. So we have int number 1, which is equal to 1, int number 2, which is equal to 2. And then we say system.out.println add number 1 and number 2, right? Good. So this is how you invoke it using the system.println method. So we just put the add, we create a new method. So this is method creation right here. So we add number 1 and number 2. So here you create add, right? So when you create the add, you open the parentheses and say number 1, which is that guy, and number 2, which is that guy. Note to self that this method will not work unless this value number 1 and this value number 2, or whatever value that you plug in, or whatever value that you want, is initialized. So meaning it has to have a value before you put it in these parentheses. It has to be assigned to a value or whatever it is that you want to assign it to before you create a method. So here I created add number 1, comma number 2. And then we say public static int, right? So we close this main method. Notice that we have closed this main method here. So let's go to public static int add. So here is our add method, and here we say add int number 1, int number 2. So this could be any variables, like I said, this could be any identifier, but it's better to know exactly what you're doing with this. So we have public static int add, open the parentheses and say int number 1, comma int number 2. Because we have two parameters here, we have two parameters there. So we close this and then we encapsulate this entire method. And then after we've encapsulated this entire method between this and this guy here, we have system.out.print number plus number and everything here. And then we say return number 1 plus number 2. So we can have something of this format here in our terminal, and if we were to test this out, we'd say test methods.java, which is this guy, and then we say number 1 plus number 2 equals 3. So we have returned the value here. As we can see, this 3 is equal to number 1 plus number 2. So whatever number you declare here or here, we have number 1 there and number 2 there. So whatever this value is, if we say 4 and 2, the value would have been 4 plus 2 here in our return method. So let's look at this other method here, test methods 2, and then same format, and this time we declare answer as an integer, and this answer identifier is mapped onto add, this very same operation. And then we say system.out.println answer, like that there. And then same format, same method, same everything. And then once we do that, we can see our terminal there will have this result as well. So this is Java tests methods 1 or methods 2 .java, and then we see that we have the same response everywhere. So how you declare it is really up to you. You can say int answer equals to add number 1, comma number 2, and then you say you print out the answer, or you just print out the method itself. These are two ways on how to print out methods from the command terminal. Alright, so I think that was it with methods. In our next video, we're going to talk about arrays, everything to do with arrays, and all that you need to know with arrays. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Stay blessed.